The 20-Minute Call is brought to you by SSK Industries, home of Cyprus, USA. Welcome to the 20-Minute Call, the podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, you'll enjoy the 20-Minute Call, hosted by me, James LeBarry. My guest today is a highly accomplished and widely respected figure in skydiving. Jens Gronemeyer is the president and CEO of Alti-2 Technologies, but his path to that role is far more layered than a simple business title. Jens is a computer engineer, entrepreneur, active skydiver, experienced jump pilot, former drop zone operator, and current competitor in 4-way, 8-way, and 16-way formation skydiving. Since making his first skydive in Höxter, Germany in 1997, he has gone on to log more than 8,900 jumps while building a career that spans software development, aviation, and leadership in the parachuting industry. Before acquiring Alti-2 in 2021, Jens had already built successful technology companies in Europe and developed a reputation for thinking deeply about how engineering, training, and safety intersect. Since taking the helm at Alti-2, he has helped lead the company into a new era of growth and innovation, which, while remaining deeply connected to the sport as both a competitor and a user of the products his company creates. Whether speaking on altimeter use in student training, tactical jumping, or the future of product development, Jens brings a rare perspective, shaped by both technical expertise and real-world experience in the air. I'm honored to welcome Jens Gronemeyer to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Hello, Jens.
Hello, James.
Thank you so much for being with me here today.
Of course.
So, Jens, many of us in the industry know you. We see you. Many wear your products, your altimeters, but we know the American Jens. We don't really know the German Jens. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind taking us back to when you were growing up, where you grew up, and what were you like as a kid, and did you have siblings?
Well, I grew up in a very small town with 30,000 people 50 miles south of Hanover, which was, as I said, very peaceful. You have no drug problems, no crime problems at that time. You walk to school or you take your bicycle. It's a very safe environment. Yeah, I grew up there. I have 3 older brothers, much older brothers than me. And my father owned a company for conveyor systems, which he inherited from his father. And that is a company which was next door to my childhood. So when I was 5 years old, I more or less grew up in that company and starting doing some mechanical work, some electrical works, and what you do as a young kid. If there are some toys for you, you can play with.
This is a very interesting point right away. I was curious to know how you were intellectually as a child, because without saying it, because you are very intelligent, particularly on the engineering side, which I think we're going to get into here. Did this intuition come naturally, or was it learned by being at your father's company?
I think one of the things was my personal interest, but also my father helped me with that. So when I had questions, he never gave me the answer. He gave me a hint how to get there and what to think about. And he also made very clear, don't believe what you read, don't believe what you hear, only believe what you see and have on your own experience. And that helped me on a lot of things to think twice. I said, that might be not the correct answer on that. And also, as I said, I had the luck in my life. I met a lot of interesting people. And if I don't understand, I ask questions. And even later in my business, when I did time and attendance software for big corporations, I always asked them to see their production. And so I got a showing by the production manager. And if I don't understand something, I said, "Why are you doing it this way?" And then you get a really open answer. And I said, "Oh, okay, never thought about that." That is so. Yeah, I'm just curious.
By age 9, you began programming.
Mm-hmm.
I believe a Commodore 3032.
Correct.
And you won an early prize for software you wrote.
Yep.
And you started your first computer business while still in high school. So let's start at age 9. I mean, you sound well ahead of your peer group.
Well, my father bought a computer for my oldest brother, which was at that time 18, because my father already thought this is the future of computers. And so since the computer was sitting in our hobby room, within a week, it was not the computer of my brother, it was mine. So it's like today, if you give a young kid an iPhone, they play with it. Okay, a Commodore 3032 is a little bit different than an iPhone. No games, no color. Interesting part is I still own that computer. It's still in my company in Germany. It's one of my most memorial things which I keep, and I already think about how to get it to the States. And so my father supported my learning on the computer, so he bought me some books how to program computer, because at that time there was nobody who can teach you to do on a computer. This was very rare. That was at the early beginning. And so he bought me 3 books from a Swiss priest, actually, who wrote that, which were very funny written. And so I learned my first language, which was at that time BASIC. Later, I learned how to program assembler on a 6502 and some other stuff. But that's how everything started.
You won this prize for software at age 9, I believe?
No, at age 13 or 14, a STEM prize, the kind of Jugendforscht in Germany called. And it was a calculation of charges for the German version of OSHA, which is super complicated. And so I said, again, my father pushed me a little bit in that direction. I said, "Hey, can you program something for this?" I would not, in the aftermath, I would say he didn't really needed it. He just wanted that I do something good on the computer, and that he really helped me to develop some skills.
Developing software for the German version of OSHA is pretty heady stuff for a 13 or 14-year-old.
Yeah, but as I said, that's I love challenges.
I assume that you were a very good student as well. I mean, you sound very intellectual.
If you talk to my teachers, probably not so much. So even 10, 20 years after I left high school, every teacher still has known my name. I was not an easy student. I was more a rebel. I was questioning a lot of stuff. I was very lazy. I really hate to sit down and learn, but I understand it's needed. So there were some topics like history or math, which were just easy for me. I enjoyed it. And there were some other stuff like learning English. It was a disaster. The only reason I learned English, I needed for my computer programming. Because all the manuals at that time, there was no German manual for computers. That's simply not existing.
Now, part of what I mentioned is, I believe in high school, started a business that is still in existence today. Is that right?
No, I founded that company, and last year we had the 40 years anniversary of my computer business. Yeah, of course, we do nowadays something completely different than 40 years ago. And this business really does not start as a planned business. It was just the people came to me and said, "Hey, Jens, you're the only one we know who knows something about computer. Can you get us a printer? Can you get us this? Can you get us these?" And so that's how that started, and it developed over the time. And now we are in my old hometown area, one of the biggest service providers existing. And all my employees are with me more than 20 years. Just one is with me 11 years, and he is 26. But this is more or less the mindset. Even the first customer we had 41 years ago is still our customer.
And forgive me, I want to make sure I didn't miss it. So what exactly does this company do today?
Well, today we do IT security for bigger corporations and we are hosting for special software. So if you have something very unique, which nobody hosts in the world, you come to us and we will host that for you. We have very deep knowledge about that. We have our own data center actually not in Höxter, in East Germany. And we operate there a couple of hundred or maybe 1,000 servers. And I said, all my co-workers have a deep knowledge what they're doing, that everybody knows the customer. It's just a different company. It's not a call. If you have a problem, you don't call a call center. You have the same employee every single time. And the customer laughs that the problems are fixed within minutes.
Are you very active with staying in touch with this business, knowing how busy you are with Alti-2?
Well, it really depends. Most of that business is run by my tech director. When it comes to contracting, when it comes to some issues with customers, every of my customer has my cell phone number. No, they can call me or WhatsApp me. That's totally fine, but that doesn't happen very often. No, so I would say sometimes 2 hours a week, sometimes 5 hours a week, but more or less that's it.
This episode is brought to you by SSK Industries, home of Cypress, USA. Since its release in 1991, the Cybernetic Parachute Release System, or Cypress, has been on more than 192 million skydives and has never failed to activate when called upon in the most critical moments. Engineered and built with German precision, the device has saved over 5,400 lives. Why choose anything else when your life might just depend on it? Cypress. Now, I also understand that you served in the German Air Force and later studied electrical engineering at a technical university. Tell me how you got into the German Air Force. What was that story?
Well, it's pretty easy. At that time, we had compulsory military service in Germany. Since I had 3 older brothers already served in the army, I could write a letter and get out of that. But since it was before the wall came down and I saw it's absolutely necessary, we have a strong army. If you don't have your own army, you have another army in your land. And so for me, it was very clear I do my service for my country. The only thing is, at that time with my computer business, I already had some connections, so I could more or less pick where to go. And so I went to the Air Force in a reconnaissance unit, where we sit in a hardened shelter and spying to the east.
Very fascinating. Was the work as interesting as it sounds?
It was as interesting as it sounded. It was really, so we had a radar on top. We were the closest radar station of the NATO to the Iron Curtain. So we know the first nuke is us very clearly. But it was really interesting. It was not the usual Army job or Air Force job, what you think. It was a technical job. Within a week after my boot camp, when I got to my later unit, they moved me to the computer department. They were so happy having somebody who knows computers. I said that was 1987. You don't find somebody in 1987 with computer knowledge. And for me, that was everything so easy because it's computer. It's the same. And we had Lady Di and Prince Charles flying at that time to Berlin. So they had to fly over East Germany. So we had 2 Harriers on our base sitting there to protect them, and a lot of other interesting stuff which was classified at the time. We had a MiG-29 from the Russians come over the border, flew in West Germany, and the entire media was blaming us, how the German Air Force is sleeping. Well, of course we have seen them. No, but they don't know that we have seen them. So there was a lot of stuff. I really enjoyed being there. I had a lot of fun in the Air Force. I actually thought about staying in the Air Force, but my officer said, Mr. Gronemeyer, you always with your open mouth, I don't think your career will be in the Air Force. And I said, I can get that.
I was going to ask, did the Air Force change you as a person at all? As you said, you were a little bit rebellious in school. Did it? Some people that go into the military, they get very shipshape. And how did it affect you?
Well, I had some issues with my leaders, but I never got really touched because of my knowledge of the computer. They really needed me. So on the computer stuff, I was just superior. So we made a kind of arrangement. I had my glitches with some stuff, and they said, "Yeah, it's Jens, that's fine." I learned my lessons. I think the year was good for me. I think everybody should do some kind of civil service for their country. I think it's a good thing for your personality. You learn some stuff. You learn to live with other people. You have to accept some orders which you don't like. I think it really helped me in my life.
So at what point did you get first introduced to skydiving? And what was the circumstance?
Well, that was 1997, a week before my 30th birthday. I had dinner with two of my friends. I said, "Hey, next week I turn 30 and I have no clue what to do." And they said, "Jens, you do every kind of sport. Have you ever thought about skydiving?" I said, "Skydiving? No. Where you can do skydiving?" "Oh, at our little airport here in Höxter." I said, "I didn't know that." So I called the skydiving club over there. I said, "Hey, when does your next student course start?" "Oh, on Monday." "Okay, put me in." And that's more or less how I started skydiving.
And what was that first experience like? Were you quite scared, or you exhilarated? I mean, obviously you're exhilarated. You stayed in.
So they let me. Nowadays, you can start your AFF without a tandem. At that time, they wanted me to do a tandem first. That was cool. But, at the age of 30, you don't think as much as if you are older. So I didn't really think about a lot of stuff. And what really made me feel very safe at that time, when I heard about the AAD, that I have a backup, which saves my life if something goes wrong, that really convinced me, yeah, that's a pretty safe sport. I can do that. To be honest, at the beginning, I was not too much into it. I did my 20, 30 jumps a year, but I still had my other sports. It was a cool sport. I liked the people running around there, but I was not as addicted as I got later.
We just did a big hop from 1987 to 1997.
Yeah.
Were you still running that same company?
Yes.
That you started during that 10-year period?
Well, I in between, I started another company for time and attendance, a software company, which became even much bigger and growing very fast. And so I had two companies I was running at that time.
Tell me about that, time and attendance. This is a software that ensures people are where they're supposed to be at work. How does this? What is this about?
Yeah, so time and attendance, and especially in Germany, is a little bit different than in the States. So, of course, for a normal employee in the office, it's check in, check out, and calculate the time. But in production in Germany, you also calculate the wages. And if you work at the night shift, you get additional money from your employer, but the taxes on that money are different. It's highly complicated. So 80% of all literature about taxes on wages are written in German language. It's really highly difficult. And we made a software for that. And at the beginning, we were happy having small companies with 50 employees. And at the end, we had corporations like Nintendo Europe, Philips Europe, Honeywell Europe. I had a daughter company in Switzerland. I had a daughter company in the Netherlands. It was growing. We had the right partnership with the right HR company, which pushed us in directions. But this part I sold 2009 to a daughter company of the Carlyle Group. That made me more or less retired. But yeah, you see my retirement nowadays. So
I was going to say, I get the sense you're a workaholic. Would you describe yourself as that?
No. I love what I do, and I hate if things are not perfect. And with this attitude, you don't work 40 hours a week. And I personally don't know a successful entrepreneur who is working 40 hours a week. That will not happen. Now, that is everybody who tells you that's a lie. No, that is so 60, 80 hours, I said, are normal work shifts for me. I saw that from my father. My father was working every Saturday and Sunday. That was nothing special for me. As I said, I don't like if things are not perfect. And then I sit down, and I'm a big fan of leading by example. And that's what I'm doing.
It's one thing to have technical know-how. Mm-hmm. It's another to manage people. Mm-hmm. And you clearly scaled and sold businesses more than once.
Yep.
How have you been able to become a great leader and manager as well as an engineer, essentially?
Actually, I'm not 100% sure I'm a great leader. I think there could be a lot of improvement. I'm probably a good visionary. I am a good engineer on the brighter scale. I could improve on the leadership part for sure, but most of the co-workers I have, they understand my thinking. And I said, that's also how you treat these people. That is family. Especially here in America, usually the co-workers are treated a little bit different, where you don't care, hire and fire, they do one mistake. That is nothing I do. We teach the people, we teach them again, we spend time in there. It's a different approach how you do things. And I think one of my biggest advantages is I'm never ran again after money. The money comes by itself with a success. I see a lot of people are money focused, short-term goals, short-term money, and this does not work on the long run.
Wisdom. So Jens, 1997, you start skydiving. By 2000, you've sold your business to the daughter company. You are essentially retired. So what are your energies going into? Because at some point you become a drop zone owner, and I'm wondering what happens next. Between 1997 and your first jump, and you said you didn't start jumping too much too quickly, but something happened.
Well, I played badminton on a very high league at that time, and with a great team. And what is the coolest thing about badminton, at least in Europe, is that a badminton team has 4 male, 2 female. It's a complete different vibe. It's like a mixed team nowadays in 4-way. It's so much cooler. At the Northern German Championships, I had problems with my arm, and I kept playing, which was stupid. And at the end of the tournament, I could not move my arm anymore. Then for 2 years, I went through doctor. I ended up at the doctor specialized for tennis in Stuttgart, where I met actually Anna Konikova in the waiting room. So all the big tennis players went there. And after a year, he said, Jens, I'm sorry, we are done here. Look for a different sport. You can play once a month, or a little bit more, but your arm will not do that. And then I was just looking for a different sport.
So then you really started getting into skydiving.
Yes. Then I started to getting skydiving. Also, when I sold my software company, I had more time for skydiving. So I started traveling, enjoying the world. I worked much less for a couple of years. Yeah, and well, the biggest skydiving point was when I moved to the US.
At what point did you become a drop zone operator or owner, if I have that correct?
Yeah, well, that was pretty easy. So the drop zone in Höxter had, how can I say that, the short version. That could be our own episode. So at that time, I owned the airport in Höxter. So it was a municipal airport which constantly made a huge loss. And the local town, Höxter, was thinking about closing the airport. I bought the airport from them. It took me 2 years that there was no loss anymore under the same conditions. And then the skydiving club left for some reasons. And then I took over. And I said, okay, I do a drop zone. And I learned a lot. I said the first year was a disaster. I learned from this. I did my tandem rating. I did my AFF rating. I already had my pilot rating, so that helped. And the second year was much better. So that is learning from pain.
Of being a drop zone owner.
When I packed 15 tandems because I had to, because I need to get the plane flying. And everybody who knows me, I hate packing my parachute. So the people made pictures of me packing tandems.
And how long did you own the drop zone for?
The first drop zone I owned 3 years. The other drop zone, which is now one of the biggest in Germany, I owned for 2 years.
And what was the highlight of your drop zone ownership career?
The highlight was actually, on my first drop zone, we started sharing a twin otter, the only twin otter in Germany, with a neighborhood drop zone. So everybody in Germany said, how can you share a plane? You are competitors. You are just 50 miles away. I said, hey guys, you can be a competitor, but still friendly. And a drop zone only earns money if the plane is flying. So what we did is that the twin otter took 2 drops at the other drop zone. In the descent, they went to my drop zone. They dropped at our place. And in the descent, they went to the other place. Also, because I owned the airport, at my drop zone, we could hot refuel. At the other airport, they couldn't. So every Monday morning, the owner of the Twin Otter, she called me and said, Jens, can I send you some flowers or whatever? The first time in my life, I earned money with that plane.
I want to make sure we get your timeline right. So you are running these drop zones, you're selling them. And I know at some point, Jens, you and I had a conversation where you also owned a company that I want to say produced plastic bags that deteriorated, if I recall, something like that. So you're still very much in business along your path, even though you could have retired.
In 2016, my best friend, which I know forever, he started at a company in Höxter as an apprentice, and they do plastics, and later they developed compostable bags from renewable sources. And so he grew with that company, and later he was a CEO of that company. And then that company got sold to a finance investor, and he got fired from one day to the other. And he called me while I was in California at that time, and I remember that he said, hey, Jens, my life in corporate Germany is done. I said, what do you mean it's done? You are working 80 hours for that company. Yeah, they fired me. So a couple of weeks later, I met him, and I remember that discussion at his kitchen table. Hey, Jens, what do you think? Let's start our own production for compostable bags from renewable sources. I said, what do you mean? Yeah, we do our own production, this and this. I said, hey, Jörg, this is a 10 million euro investment. No, it's 12. Okay. And what do you want from me? I have no clue about compostable bags and all the other stuff. Well, we need some money from you, and you will be the founding president because you know how to deal with banks, you know how to deal with local administration to get this and this done. And so for the first 12 months, you will be the president and you have to handle everything. And I thought about that for, I would say, 10 seconds maybe. I said, let's go. And yeah, it was a very exciting time. That is, I learned a lot. You can ask me now about compostable bags a lot. I still don't have the knowledge what he had or the other, but I learned a lot about these things. You do have to sign an order on extruders. I had no clue what that is before. It's just a $4 million order. And I said, Jörg, what I'm signing here? I have no clue. So that was pretty exciting, but at the end of the day, very, very successful business. So nowadays, this company has invested 18 to 20 million euro, and I think they are currently doing 35 million euro in revenue.
Jens, are you a risk taker? I mean, you seem obviously very comfortable with risk.
Yeah. Well, my banker said, Mr. Gronemeyer, you always take risks nobody else is willing to do. And every single time you get it done.
So let's talk about that. Are you not afraid of losing?
Well, my first company, my computer company, I founded with a loan from my father. And I had to pay back the full loan, of course, including interest. What I do nowadays is I take calculated risk. And I can do that pretty fast in my head. I run the numbers in my head. I said, okay, but what risk do I take? And can I afford it? Yes. But also, everything in my life is paid. So there is, if I buy a new car, it's paid cash. If I buy an airplane, it's paid cash. If I don't have it, I don't buy it. As I said, I take risks, of course, and I can lose money, but I don't have an expensive lifestyle. I live pretty decent for my type. And yeah, of course, no risk, no earnings.
Where did this philosophy of not financing or borrowing come from?
Well, that comes from my father very clearly. I remember when he celebrated, he paid off his last loan when he built up the company, and he said, "Never ever again take a loan from a bank. You are a slave of the bank, and you don't really want it. And if you are debt free, the independence you have, that is hard to beat. You can move. You can. That is, as I said, that is." I don't understand which people which don't pay off their credit cards and all that stuff. I said, hey guys, the independence you have, that is the most important part.
Does money buy happiness?
No, no. No, you need enough money to have food, especially if you have a family and children. That changed a lot of things because, of course, you want to have that your children have a good livelihood, but money does not buy anything. It makes your life a little bit easier, but the more important part is how you are happy with your job, with your circumstances, with your surroundings, with your surrounding people. I always try to get surrounded by inspiring people. And that is one of the reasons I love skydiving so much, because I met so many interesting people, which can tell you so many cool stories where you can learn, and learning never ends. And that's more or less is it.
The 20-Minute Call is proud to partner with Freefall Films, the #1 AI video editing solution for the skydiving industry, and the company I most recommend to my DZ clients. I endorse this software not because they're paying for this ad, but because I wholeheartedly believe Freefall Films is the best editing software in our industry. The software is backed by unparalleled customer service and genuinely makes drop zones more money. Get a free demo and mention the 20-Minute Call to receive a credit of $200. Freefall Films. Simpler, more powerful, more profitable. Who do you look up to in the sport or respect?
Oh, there are a lot of people. Of course, then we see that I spent 10 years next to Skydive Paris, and I learned a lot from BC, how to treat people, how to skydive, his skydiving thoughts. I have Nicholas from Airspeed, which I really respect. I said there's a lot of people I really like. There's BJ Verse. The list is very, very long. I met so many cool people. One thing, I met that guy from Peru, and I saw he did a little mini boogie in Peru out of a porter. And I only know him from big wave skydiving. And as you know, in skydiving, we never ask much, what are you do for a living? And I said, Pelao, was his nickname, means bold hair like me. When you do the next event, can you please invite me to Peru? Because the pictures look really cool. So half a year later, I got an invite from him. I paid my deposit and I flew to Peru. At that time, I didn't speak any word Spanish at all. I did some mistakes with booking because 2 a.m. is 2 a.m., of course, at night. So I arrived in Lima at 2 a.m. at night, but my friend organized the driver. He had a sign in the hand, Jens Gronemeyer, and he picked me up. He didn't speak a word English. I didn't speak a word Spanish. He drove me somewhere. We drove through some neighborhoods. I said, if he stops here, I'm just dead. I'm just dead. So he stops at I would say, high-rise tower on 12, 13 stories and make clear I should ring the bell 8th floor. I ring at 8th floor. Door got opened, took the elevator. An American young kid came out. Yeah, the homeowner is already sleeping. There's your bunk bed and have a good night. And next morning, I found out I sleep in the apartment of Fernando Gallardos, which is a former world team captain and a very well-known South American organizer. And out of this, it developed a very good friendship with him. So next day, I flew to Pucallpa up in the Amazonas to that little boogie. And we did really cool jumps. We did 9 jumps with flags and all kinds of stuff for companies. And the 10th jumps was in the stadium. And we gave some foster child kids some Christmas presents. Then I asked my friend who organized it, hey, this is very safe here. Wherever we are, there's military watching us. And then he said, Jens, they are not here for you. I said, what do you mean? Well, I'm a former admiral of the Peruvian Navy. And so he told me the entire story coming through, and I didn't know that. And also, I said, since then, we are good friends. He's now running for the Senate in Peru, and I wish him good luck. I think he's the right person for that country. I said, in skydiving, you meet really, really cool people.
Skydiving has taken you all over the world. Is there a country or a drop zone that really stands out where you think, I need to go back to that place?
Well, actually, I do. So, so a while ago, that was almost 10 years ago, I got an email from Mark Kirkby from my airspeed. Hey, Jens, I run an event in Australia. You like to join? I said, Australia? Never been to Australia. Let's go to Australia. My girlfriend at this time was general manager at Delta Airlines, so I flew for free in the business class. Not a bad benefit. And so I flew to Australia and went to that drop zone, which a very weird name next to Brisbane, Togulava. I can't.
Tugulawa.
Yeah, something like this. So
Skydive Ramblers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And when I did my first jump and I walked back to the packing area, there are koalas in the tree. How cool is that for a European? Ne? I have koalas seen in a zoo, but not in the tree. And then in the evening, the kangaroos come out. Ne? I think that was pretty cool. And I'm going to hold a speech for their symposium in May. And there is a reunion at the drop zone where I go for jumping, and I'm already excited going there. I said, I love Australia. I had so much fun over it.
I love Australia too, and I've been to that drop zone. Macca, the DZO, Dave McAvoy, wonderful human being. And yeah, what an amazing place. Oh, that's very cool. Well, tell me, Jens, you did mention that you were in California for 10 years. What brought you out there for that period?
Well, that's pretty easy. When I decided to leave Germany, there are technically at that time 2 places if you want to improve your belly flying where to go. One is Eloy and the other one is Paris. Since Los Angeles has a little bit more to offer if you have a family, a wife and a kid, than Eloy, the decision was made very easy. So that brought me to California.
I see. So and the reason you were leaving Germany is purely because of, you didn't need to be working necessarily and you wanted to be doing more skydiving. Is that the reason for leaving?
Actually, no. The reason for leaving was I owned the airport. I did a big mistake. I didn't hire the son of a department leader of the local administration. And then my problems started. So the snow piling in the winter stopped, and this stopped, and I got problems there, and I said, hey guys, and I talked to them. I said, hey guys, you can't do that. We have a contract, this and some other stuff. Interesting things happened. And then I tried to talk to them in a good manner. I said, hey, what's going on here? Do I miss something? Yeah, no, nobody was telling you what's really going on. And then I said, guys, we have a contract. You are not following your contract. Oh, you can sue us. You probably will win in 5 or 8 years, but your life will be miserable. And then I said, if you have all options in your life, I said, guys, I don't want that. I give you the airport back and I leave. Oh, you can't leave. Oh, I can. I'm an IT guy. Everybody loves me. I'm faster gun than you can think. And they don't believe that. And then I left. That is the short version. So the longer version is they sued me and wanted to suit me in the public, put some nice stuff out of the newspapers, that I won all lawsuits and that they finally had to pay me a huge amount of money you will never read in any newspaper, because the newspaper said, oh, if I publish this, I never get an information from the local administration anymore. So far to freedom of press. Anyhow, in the aftermath, I'm very happy that they did that, because I would never begun to America, and the possibilities I have, the people I met, the open mindset, the things I learned in addition, I don't want to change that, not at all.
Throughout this conversation, you've said the things I've learned, or what I learned from that, or what I've learned from that. You are very curious-minded. It seems like you are learning all the time.
I love learning. Yeah, learning never ends. I said there's a lot of stuff. I just sit there. I don't understand it, and I'm just constantly curious. And believe it or not, since 3 months I have a new hobby.
Well, do tell.
Well, my neighbor here in the land, George Reuter, also owns a skydiving company. He is convincing everybody here in the land start hockey playing. Since I'm a kid, I wanted to play hockey. The problem is, in my hometown and 50 miles around, there is no ice stadium. So first, I have to learn how to skate. And that's what I currently do. As when I'm in DeLand twice a week, I go to Daytona in the ice stadium and I start learning ice skating because I really would love to play hockey in my life.
You surprise me. You've had to leave Europe in order to learn how to skate in Daytona Beach, Florida.
You will be actually surprised. Hockey is a very booming sport in Florida. There are 70-year-old people playing hockey again. That is booming. I don't know why, but everybody loves it.
How does your body feel after a night of skating?
It's okay. It's not too bad. I do my usual day is doing 1 or 2 hour sports, so that is not too bad. The only thing is on the skating, the backward skating, I'm still scared to death. That is just my brain says it works, but my feet are not really doing what I want. But yeah, as I said, I love challenges.
How lovely to continue to learn new things, while still not being 20 years old anymore. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, but close.
This episode is sponsored by SSK Industries, home of Cypress, USA. Since 1983, SSK has served the parachuting industry, and today they focus on Cypress sales, service, and support in the United States. Learn more at sskinc.com. So Jens, at some point, Alti-2 comes on your radar, this very well-established company in skydiving. Everyone is very familiar with their altimeters, certainly the Altimaster. What compelled you to want to buy this company when, sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, when you live in the land, as I said, if you go here in the town, you meet one skydiver after the other. It's just on one table, Bill Booth is sitting, then you meet Bill Coe, then you meet this guy. That is just how the land is. And so one day you meet the old owners of Alti-2, and you talk to them about your life and what you have done, and that I'm a tech guy, and I have some electrical engineering. And then they came up and said, "Hey, Jens, are you not interested to buy our company and do this? And we need some help in marketing and sales." Well, this was a little bit short, only marketing and sales. So, of course, they needed help in marketing and sales, but a lot of other things. As I said, I don't like if things are not perfect. Yeah, my hobbies are engineering, skydiving, traveling. So I thought it's a great idea to buy Alti-2 because it combines all of my 3 hobbies. As I said, if I would have known how much work it is, I would probably not have done it. But now we are almost there. We have now our own building. We are now ISO certified. When I came in, we had 5 people in administration, 3 people in production. Now we have 1 in administration and 7 in production. We tripled this year our R&D budget. We are getting there. Not the speed I want. Patience is not my superpower, but little by little. And I keep my traveling. I said, I go to Australia this year. I fly next week to Ravenna, jump with some friends in Italy. I have an invite already to the Middle East. Okay, whether that will happen, we don't know for some other reasons. I said, I get there, just I have to work a little bit more. But work does not hurt.
So when you buy Alti-2, what does that first day look like going as you're walking around there and you see that for you to take this to the level that you want to, there's a lot more work here than you maybe thought. Did you ever feel overwhelmed? And what was your biggest problem you had to solve?
The biggest, well, first of all, if you buy the company, you have to understand the company. And of course, when I didn't have the specific knowledge on the production of small electronics, I said, so you have to learn this part. You have to learn the customers. You have to learn how the dealers are acting. You have to learn the market. You have to learn the weaknesses of your companies. You have to learn the superpower of the company. So I would say the first year was more learning before changing. The only thing I changed pretty fast was a lot of things in administration, like our repair process was streamlined. Before it was 10 emails back and forth and this and this and this. And so I built a web shop. Luckily, I'm a computer programmer, so I could do the web shop by myself and streamline the repair process. So a repair usually has a 1 week turnover, because I told the people, hey, if an altimeter does not work, the Skydiver can't jump. It needs to be back. And the biggest hurdle was for sure the ISO 9001 certification. There's a reason there are not many skydiving companies have that certification. And that was a lot of work, a lot of paperwork. Luckily, to be honest, more for my engineers and for my production manager. But still, that was a huge accomplishment for Alti-2 to get this done. I'm very proud of my team that we pulled that off, and we just got the audit. Every year you have another audit, whether you follow all these guidelines. And there is a reason why our product quality is so high, because as that we produce under 9001.
Many people listening have no idea what an ISO 9000 means. What is the significance of that?
So ISO 9001 is a process where you document everything in your production. So it starts with, from which batch every single part of your altimeter is. An altimeter like our Atlas-2 Plus has 70 different parts, 70 different parts from 70 different vendors. So we know exactly in your altimeter, your pressure sensor came with this batch. Your board, your PCB, your peripheral board was produced then and then. By the way, we do even the boards here in the land. It's a manufacturer half a mile from our company here. We know where the display comes from. We know which employee did the water testing. We know which employee put the boards together, which employee did. So we know everything. We document when we get a repair in. We know exactly what is a repair, what is this, what is this. We just got from Yuma 30 units, military units for maintenance, and we look in every single unit and they said, okay, why is that going this way? Since we document everything, we know where we can or we have to improve. Because if you don't know the exact problems which can occur after 10 or 15 years, you cannot improve your next product. And we have that everything written down. We don't guess. We know where we need to improve. And I can highly engage everybody. If you come to the land, we are working from Monday to Thursday. We have most of the time you can visit our production. There are some days where we do some stuff which is not on our webpage, but otherwise you can visit our production, and everybody who goes through our production understands the difference.
With that new certification, what doors did that open up for you in Alti-2?
We don't get actually a single new order because of this, but it makes your business with big governmental customers much easier. When you tell them you are ISO certified, they don't come with their inspectors and want to see your quality assurance system and want to see this and this. I said, if you see the amount of quality we go through here, I said every civilian altimeter is tested 11 times by production, every single one. And I said, with this certification, it just, you have ISO certification, we don't have to do that. Okay, done.
You've created some new products since you acquired the company, and you've only had the company, I think, officially for 4 years. So that's quite extraordinary to bring on new products in such a short period of time. What about these products are you most pleased about?
Well, to be honest, in my eyes, we are slow. I come from the tech side. Apple does a new product every year. We are not there yet. But as I said, we just hired some more engineers. We are putting more money in R&D. So the biggest thing, I think, especially safety-wise, Alti-2 did, and that I did actually from the early beginning, we invented the only altimeter for student training to make the student training much safer. So when I came in, a drop zone dropped their analog altimeters, I think it was 12 of them, for recalibration. So an analog altimeter, you have a lot of moving parts. If an analog altimeter hits the ground, it's out of calibration. And you and I are old enough, we were sitting in the plane and you see the people hitting their altimeter, that the needle moves and all that mist. And so...
Guilty of that.
Yeah. And under canopy, the people, if you have the traffic pattern, they could know you barely can read the altimeter. And also, a lot of these kids nowadays, I think the average kid doing AFF, the average age is 23. These kids reach digital much better than analog. So learning from this, when we got these 12 altimeters and 5 or 4 were so far out of calibration, I said, hey guys, how can you let students jump with that? That's dangerous. And they said, yeah, but we can't afford digital altimeter and this. And there's a lot of people, and the people, they read the clock much better than digital. I said, no, the young kids are not doing that anymore. That is this, yes, my age, yes, but not these kids. So we invented the student altimeter program. And every single drop zone who switched to the digital altimeter program, they love it. When I come to Eloy, the chief instructor said, Jens, all my problems are gone. I said, the students, they dropped the altimeters on the ground because the jump was not great. The instructor had to pull for them. And with our student altimeters, which has military heritage, you can throw them against the wall. They are more or less undestroyable. And I said, we have a training mode. I said, there's a lot of things. I think that is a huge thing on safety, what we brought to the sports. And that is actually something I'm a little bit proud of, to give my sport something back which makes the skydiving safer.
And that's specifically the training mode in the student altimeter?
The training, the entire program. So you can, on the ground, you can simulate a skydive and you use the same altimeter you have in the air. And I'm also still a current AFF instructor. I always say on the first jump, 80% of students' brain is gone. It's somewhere. And of course, it's misuse of rescue equipment. The people jump out of 13,000 feet. It's cold, it's noisy. They forgot entirely their brain. So you try to give these people an environment on the ground which is as close as you can to the jump. If you use the same altimeter, they are used to that altimeter. They know the view. They know when they have to pull. It's also a memory in your eyes. So it's a lot of also on psychology, where you help the student to do better jumps and get less re-jumps. And the next invention we will do for this is we do a special altimeter for tunnel training.
Really interesting. Say more about that. How does that work?
A lot of drop zones start now that the students, before their first jumps, they get 1 or 2 minutes in the tunnel. And actually some drop zones are doing 10 minutes in the tunnel. And so how do you simulate the training in free fall in the tunnel? And technically we do the same stuff what we do on the ground. We use a student altimeter. The only big difference is it doesn't have a pressure sensor, because if you put a normal altimeter in a wind tunnel, it goes crazy. So that is just a lighter version of our student altimeter. So the student can already see in the tunnel what he sees later in the air. And by the way, I just realized I've been a couple of weeks ago to Eloy, and the military unit had a very interesting student training program. So they put their students 30 minutes in the wind tunnel, and then they let them jump by themselves without any AFF instructor, just with a video guy. The video guy has not an AFF rating, and it works. I saw the videos. I was really impressed. I never thought about that. And it's a military program. So, of course, in the civilian side, you probably can't do that. That is another thing, learning constantly, watching their videos. I said, I'm impressed.
If you're a DZO or DZM listening to this podcast and you're not using Burble, I've got a question. Why not? If the reason is price, what's the cost of your time? Other booking and manifest softwares are a one-size-fits-all. Burble was built from the ground up by a DZO for DZOs to maximize efficiency. Now, isn't that nice? There's no software that compares. Choose Burble. Jens, you gave a presentation in Spain. We were in Spain a couple of weeks ago. I've seen you at PIA year over year at the symposium. Mostly, I believe your talks are both to civilian and military. If you mind sharing, what percentage of your sales or your output, at least with altimeters, is civilian versus military?
Well, it's no secret that most of our business is military. That is by far our biggest customer. On the other hand, the good thing is for the civilian skydivers, your civilian altimeter goes over in the same production line like the military one. Like when you just look, we launched in December our Plus model. So the battery in our civilian altimeters last 5 months, that came out of the military side. Now, for the military, we needed a bigger battery. And so this enhancement came for free for the civilian skydivers. But like in most of your businesses in the world, what we develop for the military comes a little bit later on the civilian side.
I assume that militaries from all over the world are using your products. Are you traveling all over the world, just showing off your products to these military?
Of course.
Yeah.
That's what I love to do. I love to travel. I have 106 countries in my passport.
Wow. Any country you haven't been to that you would like to go to?
Oh, there's a couple of actually. I still have Uruguay, I still have Paraguay and Bolivia in South America open. I love South America, and now I speak actually a little bit Spanish enough to drive public transport and order food. I have Mongolia and Bhutan on my list, and Mongolia is actually using our altimeter, so this will probably happen one day. I would love to go to Siberia. I don't see that happen for the next 10 years. But we'll see. There's a couple of stuff I would love. Cambodia is still open. There is some stuff in Africa still open. But the main travel list is done, more or less.
What an incredible life. Tell me, what does a normal day look like for you when you wake up in DeLand? What are the first things how you start your day?
So usually I get up at 4 o'clock, more or less. The first walk is to the coffee machine. That's no secret. I'm a coffee addict, absolutely. Then the second is going to my computer, looking what's going on in Europe with my European business. If there's something I have to make a phone call or jump in or something because of the time difference. Also, this is the evening of Asia, so I can still contact with our Asian dealers or customers. If nothing serious goes on, I do sports until usually 6 or something. And we start working at 6:30. So in between 6:30 and 7, I go to work. Well, at least now twice a week, usually Tuesdays and Thursdays, I go to Daytona ice skating at noon. That is really cool because my brain focused so much on ice skating not to fall down and get more bruises. So I can't think about my business. Yeah, and somehow it depends really on the evening. I go usually to bed between 8 and 9.
I was going to ask what time you went to bed because it's a early start and a long day.
Yeah, but I go to bed early. That's fine.
Do you read books or listen to podcasts?
I read books, not as much as I want. Usually I read books when I'm on vacation. And then I'm an avid book reader. It goes within 2 or 3 days, the book is finished. That is just, it goes very fast. I'm listening sometimes to podcasts, not too much, actually, maybe 1 or 2 a week. It's more that I have so much in my brain, I'm not listening. That is a typical thing. If I ever walk by and don't say hi, it's not that I don't like you. It's just my brain is just in the moment somewhere else, and I just have missed you. That can happen.
With that busy brain, do you think you're misunderstood?
Sometimes, for sure, yes. For sure, yes. Also, a lot of people don't understand. I'm still half German. I have German heritage, and I'm much better now. But sometimes I'm too straightforward for a lot of Americans. That is, I said, "Oh, you can't say that." I said, "Sorry, that is just my opinion, and that's nothing personal." Some people don't really like that. I said, I apologize. It's just me. On the other hand, it has the advantage you will never have a knife in your back, because I'm just straightforward. And there are way more cultural differences between Europeans and Americans than you would think.
I have certainly observed that for sure. I have a little bit of a mix. I was born in England, but raised in the Caribbean, came to the US. So I have quite a mix of family and have traveled enough to definitely see the cultural differences between the two. And each have their pros, each have their cons, I would say. Tell me, Jens, there's a question I always like to ask my guests. And that question is, can you think of a crossroads moment whereby, had you not met someone specific that would maybe change the course of your life, or had you not said yes to an opportunity that changed the direction of your life, or maybe you said no to an opportunity because it would change the course or trajectory of your life? Can you think of a moment where, had you not met a person that was so significant in your life, or said yes or no to something that, if you'd not met them, said yes or said no, it's likely that we're not even speaking today?
I think the biggest thing was my move to the States. That was the biggest change in my life. And I said, I'm very, very grateful that I did that. I'm very grateful what I learned in America, that opened my mind by far, in a lot of directions. As I said, you grew up in a small town in Germany. Even I had some business in Europe. But what I learned in America on a different opinions, on different people, on different culture, that opened my mind by far. I got twice an offer from big corporations, from really, really big corporations. They wanted to hire me for a lot of money. And I had to tell them, guys, you don't understand the concept of my life. The concept of my life is not making as much money. The concept of my life is having fun. And having fun and working for big corporations, this does not match.
I can understand why you like skydiving so much.
Yeah.
I think that's the philosophy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Life is short.
Yeah, well, in skydiving, you meet a lot of... I don't think there is any... I never met a group of people which are so diverse than skydivers. You have gay people, you have lesbian people, you have transgender, you have liberals, you have Democrats, you have libertarian, you have, I don't know, all kind of people, and we don't care. We are skydivers. We jump together. We don't care. I don't think there is any other group of people which is so diverse than skydivers.
It's a beautiful community, for sure. Jens, thank you so much for spending an hour with me, sharing about the journey of your life, and certainly with Alti-2. Do you have any closing thoughts that you would wish to share, either about skydiving or about the amazing products? I mean, there's a nice maybe opportunity to say what makes your products so good and why everyone should buy them.
Well, it's pretty easy. The good thing is our products usually last 10 to 15 years for a very good reason. The bad thing is our products last every 10 to 15 years because the people don't buy something new. A lot of people don't understand that the major of an altimeter is to show the right altitude. And I said, if you come to our company, see our production, our engineering, how much work we put in quality assurance, then you understand that we are an engineering company. Other people are much better in marketing than we are. That's fine. We are engineers, and that's what we do. On a lot of things, we have a different philosophy. If you look here in the company, we have a nice break room. You can eat from our floor. There's a lot of stuff we do simply different. There's a reason we are growing pretty well in the moment. We are self-funded. We have no debt. If you look in my life, it's a pattern. You do the same stuff I do with all my other companies. Get the company debt-free, have your employees trained, have a great team which stays behind the product. And that's technically what Alti-2 is. And I think the people should be excited that since we are funding now way more R&D, you will see some interesting stuff coming out the next 2 years.
I'm so glad I asked you that question. Really interesting. Jens, thank you again. It was a true pleasure.
You're welcome. On my side. Perfect.
Many thanks to our title sponsor, SSK Industries, home of Cyprus, USA, for supporting the 20-Minute Call. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And if you want to support the show further, support the companies that support this podcast. Until next time, blue skies.